All right, good to see you all today as we get our second session in on Romans, on key readings in Romans. So let's have a prayer before we start. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we give thanks for the opportunity to study your word, to give us your Holy Spirit, and in this conversation and this teaching, help us to grow into a deeper appreciation of what it means when we think about your righteousness and us being made righteous. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so let's do a little review for those who were here last week. We're looking at the book of Romans, key verses. This is a little piece of the Papyrus Group 46, many leaflets that fold out, dated from 150 to 250 AD. I always like to put those up there. I want to let you see that we've got some resources on the web as you study Romans. This one, Enter the Bible. It's easy to remember, Enter the Bible. You go to that, and this is something Luther Seminary does. And you can go down here and you can click on a book like Romans. And this is all free. It gives you a summary, some of the themes of that book. Gives you some other information, people, places, images, maps, videos of some people speaking on the book of Romans. And some passages, some of which we're going to be studying. So that's enterthebible.com. So I want you to know that that's there. This is something I found really just to show you how blessed we are, I guess, compared to people in the past. So this is that same Papyrus 46, and you notice that wherever I put the cursor over, you get it at the top there. And I know that doesn't mean anything, but look over here. You've got this is all the different parts of Romans that we have from this one papyrus group, from 150 to 250 AD. Okay? So you can click on this one, and then that'll show you that particular one. Which again, probably doesn't mean much to you as far as someone who it doesn't mean much to me, and my Greek's getting pretty rusty. But it's just exciting to see that these manuscripts that your English Bible comes from are right there available for people to look at. It's not just something that a few people have available to them. And then finally, just one more time, a reminder that this whole study is right here on our adult education page of the website. Here's your schedule. And then, although we haven't put up last week's yet, this is the one on devotions. It'll probably be up today, so that last week's session and then this week's session will all be posted here on the website that you can get right to them. Okay? So that's just a couple resources I wanted to show you. Let's do some review. I've told you last week that this is Paul's most comprehensive and general letter. He didn't found this church. Christianity got there before Paul ever got to Rome. But yet, as we're going to see in chapter 16, Paul seems to know some people who are there. And that's always been a little bit of a perplexing thing. But we'll cover that when we get to chapter 16. He probably writes from Corinth in the mid-50s, and his plan is he's going to go to Jerusalem, deliver this offering that he's been taken in what we usually call his third missionary journey through Asia Minor, and then he's going to go back to Jerusalem, give that money to them, hopefully that goes well, and then he's going to Rome. Things don't go well in Jerusalem, he gets arrested, he appeals to Caesar as a way probably to get to Rome, because he's also a Roman citizen. And he was beaten up, and when they found out that he was beaten and he was a Roman citizen, people were freaked out because you can't do that to a Roman citizen. So anyway, he appeals to Caesar, he gets to Rome, and he's hoping that after that to go to Spain. We have no evidence that he ever made it to Spain, but that's where things are in the process for Paul. For us, our process, as I told you last week, is we're going to do like sometimes you do when you drive across country. We're going to go, 65, no, 65, 75. Anyway, we're going to go the speed limit, But then we're going to slow down on some certain passages. Because if we just read the whole book of Romans, it would be a couple-year study. But we are going to, of course, do stuff before and after these key passages because we've got to put them in context. But that's our process. Last week's passage, Romans 1:16, we got these three important words that we unpacked. There are many more in that couple of verses, but these we unpacked. And so when we think about gospel, evangelion means good news. And really, when you look at Paul's use of this word gospel, it is the event of Jesus told with its significance. And Paul uses lots of words to talk about this significance. Justification is probably his favorite. Redemption, reconciliation, deliverance from death. These are all things that peace with God. Lots of words that he'll use to talk about the significance of the event. But remember last week we talked about the gospel, that message, that good news that brings salvation, which is the next one of the other words, comes, it's a word. Words have the power to affect salvation. Well, you came up with all of these words to talk about what the gospel was in your small group work, and I think you hit it really well. Well, of course, the key word last week was also the word faith, pistis or pisteuo in Greek, which really is two things: trusting in someone, in this case God, but also faith also implies that you know something about that one that you trust so that you can believe in them. So here the child leaps in the father's hands. Well, that child isn't leaping if he doesn't know who you're leaping to, right? So faith involves knowledge or a relationship, knowing something of the one that you're trusting in. Does that make sense? We then looked at how Paul, when he says, uses this, the righteous shall live by faith, that we looked at how Paul has two manuscripts before him, perhaps, Hebrew and Greek. A lot of people, though, believe that Paul primarily was working from the Greek, the Septuagint. The Septuagint, remember, is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. So Paul's got a Greek translation of the Old Testament, then he's got the original Hebrew before him, or available to him. Because Hellenization, the Greek culture had become so pervasive in the land at Paul's time, most people needed to know the Old Testament in Greek, just like we need to have the Bible in English. So Paul is very likely using the Septuagint, and you'll remember that in the Septuagint it says, the righteous shall live by my faith, as in God's faith. And then the Hebrew says, the righteous shall live by their faith, as in the person's faith. So whose faith is it? God's or ours? Is it God's faithfulness or our faithfulness that we live and we bank on? Well, what I shared with you is Paul, very conveniently and beautifully, right here, says, the one who is righteous will live by faith. He leaves off the my or there. And some people say, well, he's thinking of the Septuagint. Some people say he's thinking of the Hebrew. I think it makes sense, since he didn't put one of those others, that he's talking about both. Certainly, it'd be most consistent for us when we look at what Paul says, and when we get to Romans 3 this morning, that it's certainly God's faithfulness that we bank on, but we are trusting and believing in that faithfulness of God. So, anyway, that's what we worked on last week. I want to get everybody up to speed here who wasn't here last week. And then finally, the word salvation. I'm not sure this is what Paul meant by salvation, but I like the slide anyway. I like the image. Salvation for Paul is from the wrath of God. And we're going to start talking about that now. God is righteous and God is angry at unrighteousness. It is a fundamental position of our scriptures that when God sees all the injustice, the people dying, the children dying of hunger, who are malnourished, the wars, the exploitation of people in power, of other people, the violence, all the things that we could name, it doesn't make God happy. And it makes God angry. And we wrestle with the wrath of God. We don't want to think about God as wrathful, and yet that's what the Bible says God is towards sin and the condition of the world. One person said, Bill, you can't understand the wrath of God unless you understand the love of God. If you don't care about someone, if they do something horrible, you don't care. You don't get angry, but you get mad when you love someone and they do something that's injuring. I mean, you could use the parent analogy. If I didn't love my kid, when I saw them doing destructive behaviors, I wouldn't care. Go do what you want. In fact, we know this to be true. That kids who have the most freedom to do whatever they want and no boundaries, even though they're envy of all their other friends, they grow up feeling like they don't count and they don't matter. We know this for a fact. I'm not saying to be over-disciplined, but boundaries kids get, that means I'm cared about. So that's, you have to understand that when you think about the concept of the wrath of God. But so the gospel brings salvation, relief, redemption from this wrath of God, which we're going to talk about more in just a second. So that's review. We get to today's passage, which is Romans 3:21 through 26. This is the section of the scripture that Martin Luther, which I quoted last week, said, "Right then I sensed I had been wholly reborn and had entered by open doors to very paradise." This is the section of scripture where, as Luther was reading, had his great aha moment that God transacts with us freely. We don't earn God's grace. We'll see if Luther was on target or not today, but we're at some pretty sacred ground today when we look at this. And of course, as John Wesley, influenced by Luther's preface to Romans, was really the source of his conversion, which John Wesley was basically the starter of the whole Methodist Church. So we're going to look at this passage in context of Paul's overall argument. So I'm going to have to read a lot of text for this particular key passage today. So I love to get you involved, and we're going to do some of that today, but I need you to just say, okay, I'm going to work hard now for the next 15 minutes. Because we're going to go over some controversial, I guess you could call them controversial, but we're going to go over some difficult ground. So really work hard with me, all right? So what we're going to do is go back. Or no, we're right there now. Let's read the actual passage, and then we'll go back and get it in context. So this is Romans 3:21. And then we're going to go back, like I said. "But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been disclosed," or revealed, "and is attested by the law and the prophets." So the law and the prophets point to this, attest it, make the case for it. The righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ. Now, this is important. This could absolutely just as well be translated, the righteousness of God through the faith of Jesus Christ. It absolutely, any Greek scholar that said, one's way better than that. No, it could absolutely be translated, the righteousness of God through the faith of Jesus Christ. You see, is there a difference there? We'll maybe talk about that. For all who believe. So now for all who believe in the faithfulness of Jesus Christ, or the faith of what Jesus did for us. For there is no distinction, since all have sinned and all fall short of the glory of God. They are now justified by His grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God put forward as a sacrifice of atonement. I'll unpack that word a little later, or make sure I do if I don't get there. By His blood, effective through faith. He did this to show His righteousness, because in His divine forbearance He had passed over the sins previously committed. It was to prove at the present time that He Himself is righteous, and that He justifies the one who has faith in Jesus. Or justifies the one who has the faith of Jesus. Okay? Different ways to translate. So there you go. This is the great Reformation text. This is the great, text that Luther found so earth-shattering and really revolutionary in the way he was taught to understand God. Which, remember, was primarily that the righteousness of God was this amazing standard that we had to somehow meet. And this phrase, righteousness of God, terrified Luther. But when he realized that this came as what? Grace as a gift, it kind of changed everything. But now, to appreciate this, let's back up and look at this passage in context. After last week's text, which is really a kind of a topical sentence for the whole letter, Paul's going to start into argument, or making a case for something. So Paul says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and wickedness." The reason this has a little R in it, I've made a filter there for the word righteousness in Greek. And in Greek, if you want to make something opposite of something, you put an A in front of it. So this is adikaios. So it's the opposite of righteousness, which is translated in English as wickedness. But just, I want you to think about that. Of those who by their wickedness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them. Got to figure out who them is in a minute. Because God has shown it to them. How has God shown it to them? Ever since the creation of the world, His eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things that He has made. Paul's saying that you look at creation and God's laws, God's graciousness, or whatever, is visible. Something about the way things should be are visible. So they are without excuse. Again, who's they? For though they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks to Him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their senseless minds were darkened. So this phrase here is really important to what Paul's trying to build. Whoever he's talking about here is without excuse. Well, it becomes fairly clear that Paul is talking about all of humankind at this point. In particular, the Gentiles. We're going to see Paul's going to switch in a minute and talk about, now you Jewish people, my people. So, since he makes that move, well, I'm not saying that Jewish people aren't included here, but he's certainly talking about all of humanity, all of the Gentile world. Even though we don't have the law, look, we've got an idea of the way things should be. And so our minds have gotten darkened, and this is Paul's statement about our situation. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling a mortal human being, or birds, or four-footed animals, or reptiles. Somebody gave me a little book called Romans, Romans, but not the book of Romans, the actual Roman culture for dummies, or those yellow books. And I was reading, and I just was reminded of how in this time there are tons of different gods that people believe in, and they've got these little gods that they have existing in their houses that they believe in and that they abide by, and it's very superstitious that if they do the right things, that God will do something right for them. There's some connection to, okay, I'll do this and this God will help me. If I give this idol reverence, then this God will protect me when I go in the marketplace, or I'll be successful in the market. There are all kinds of different gods that the Greek people, and certainly the Roman people at this time, had as a part of their life. So, therefore, God gave them up. The word here is kind of interesting. Let me just see if I can look up this one little Greek dictionary here. Hand over, or to convey something to someone, particularly a right or an authority. So God kind of not gave up on them, but gave them over to another authority. gave them over to their idolatry and their wishes. Is really what's being said. To the lusts of their hearts and impurity, to the degrading of their bodies among themselves. So a lot of these gods were fertility cult gods, even going way back to the Canaanite gods, where there would be cultic prostitution and all kinds of things that you would do to, again, manipulate the gods to do something for you. So God gives them over to this, or gives us over to this, because they exchange the truth about God for a lie. And worship, this is a really great phrase. If you had your Bible out, you'd want to underline this one. Worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator. You look at all of human history and you see us worshiping the creature rather than the Creator. Does anything come to mind? We can just we don't have to do the mics, but how do you see us doing that today? Do you still see some of that go on? Maybe it's a little different than back then, but how do you see it going on? Can you give me some examples?
Science.
Science, okay. That's the creature. We've come up with, that's human, right? Okay, good. Excellent.
Mother Earth.
I'm sorry?
Mother Earth.
Mother Earth. A lot of people worship the earth, yes?
Human beauty.
Mmm.
It sells us everything.
It sells us everything. Go to the grocery store. Boom.
Because
Yeah.
with cell phones, everybody has them in their face.
Technology. I don't worship my iPhone. Well, maybe,
I can't figure this out.
except for when its battery runs out. No. Okay, good. What else?
The dollar.
The dollar, money.
Yes, somebody just said that.
Money, yes, right. Very easy to get swept up into worshiping the creature rather than the Creator. Any others? Those are great. Yeah. So, now Paul is going to go into some evidence of God giving people up to this other authority or to their own wishes. Before I go into that, however, I want to make what I think is an important... no, that's not it either. There we go. A couple of important points about what's been said and then where we're going. So, in an honor-shame society, what Paul is really saying, as far as God's wrath being created, He gave them over, is God has been dishonored. He's been wronged. God has been wronged because we worship the creature rather than the Creator. We did not give God God's due honor. We have dishonored God. And right now, he's making the case about Paul's understanding of same-sex sexual behavior was this the same as ours today. Paul sees same-sex behavior in his day as an example that the world is broken and fallen and sinful. But that's what Paul knew about same-sex relationships. What about today when we've learned lots of other different things about same-sex behavior as far as people have some orientation, they have that same-sex attraction. And so would Paul lump people who wanted to have a lifelong covenant, faithful relationship with someone else, like marriage, I guess you could say, or as far as the fidelity of that, and would he lump that also in what he's talking about here in Romans? Some people say he would, and some people say he wouldn't. Some people would say that what Paul knew of same-sex sexual activity was cultic, promiscuous. There was a lot of pedophilia in this time. So it was manipulation and exploitation, and so that's what Paul is talking about. And that, is he really talking about this? And what we are debating today, and on that one I have to say I'm not sure. But my purposes for kind of stopping here at this point is to give you, remember the waypoint. Paul's primary subject is not homosexuality here. He's citing one example of where he's going. And in fact, one scholar, Everett Kalin, has pointed out that this is very similar to a book called Wisdom of Solomon, one of those intertestamental books. And in fact, this scholar says that Paul probably, it was a very popular book in Paul's day, and he was maybe even modeling his argument here. And in Wisdom of Solomon, it basically says the same thing. God gave the Gentile world up, and they did all these things. And so at the end, though, therefore is very different than what Paul will say in a minute when we get to chapter 3. So I guess my point in saying that is, again, Paul is using this as an argument about where he's going. And he's not just taking up that subject. But anyway, again, to review, I don't think I was very clear there. Some people see our current debate fit, that's what Paul's talking exactly about what we're debating about, approving or not approving. And some people say, no, they're totally different. And you have to decide on that. Okay? So, and we have to decide, we have to wrestle with that, for sure. But this here is the really interesting thing that comes along. Now Paul says, therefore you have no excuse, whoever you are, that you are so horrible, blah, 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 and that, you're in deep trouble. No, Paul doesn't say it. He says, when you judge others. Where does that come from? Doesn't it sound like he just did a lot of judging? Oh, so something must be going on here. Let's keep looking. When you judge others, for in passing judgment on another, you condemn yourself because you, the judge, are doing the very same thing. Who is he talking to now? He's talking to Jewish Christians, Jewish people in Rome, who he's writing to. Perhaps this would also include Gentile Christians, I don't know. But I think when we go on, we're going to see, it seems like he's talking to his own people, who are going to condemn them because, you do the very same things. You say, we know that God's judgment on those who do such thing is in accordance to the truth. Do you imagine that whoever you are, that when you judge those who do such things, and yet do them yourself, you will escape the judgment of God? Or do you despise the riches of his kindness and forbearance and patience? Do you not realize that God's kindness is meant to lead you to repentance? But by your hard and impenitent heart, you are storing up wrath for yourself on the day of wrath, when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. For he will repay according to each one's deeds. Wait a minute! That's not... What? Oh no! To those who by patiently doing good seek for glory and honor and immortality, he will give eternal life. While for those who are self-seeking and who obey not the truth but wickedness, there will be wrath and fury. There will be anguish and distress for everyone who does evil, the Jew first, and also the Greek. But glory and honor and peace for everyone who does good, the Jew first and also the Greek. For God shows no partiality. That book I mentioned, The Wisdom of Solomon, the argument in that book is, look at how horrible the Gentiles are, and thank goodness God chose us. You see a difference here? That's right. Paul doesn't do that. He says, look at how horrible the Gentiles are. We're no better. Quite a switch there. Quite a switch. Okay? God shows no partiality. That's a radical statement. Wait, I thought God chose the chosen people. Well, he did. They are, and he's going to talk about it in chapters 9 through 11. They are special, and they are first. They have the utmost honor. They're firstborn. This is honor-shame society. That's how they work. So, but God doesn't show any partiality. You don't get in just because of who you belong to or whatever. No, we're all guilty. We've all missed the mark. And so, interesting that he puts us all in the same boat. And notice, though, you're going to say, wait, I thought Paul believed by justification by grace through faith. I didn't think that we are rewarded by our deeds. Doesn't that seem to come? What's that?
Look like good work.
It looks like good works. I thought Luther said that, we're saved by grace through faith.
By my own power and strength comes.
Right. And Paul seems to be saying here that on the day of judgment, the people who do right, whether they're Gentile or Jew, glory glory, and the people who don't do right, wrath. What's going on? Now, remember what I said. Remember the waypoints? If you just took this out of context, what would you say, Paul? How would Paul be different than any other religion? There would be no difference. You see, Paul is on the way to somewhere. So, so key that you understand that when you read this section. Okay, we got to move. I'd love to stop and get your thoughts, but I don't have time. so hang in there, because we gotta move. All who have sinned apart from now, he brings in the law. So we talked about the Gentile world and the Jews, that we don't do any better than the Gentiles. So we're going to be in the same boat. But now he's going to move to the law. All who have sinned apart from the law will also perish apart from the law, and all who have sinned under the law will be judged by the law. So now, if you are a Jewish person and your defense was, hey Paul, we've got the law, we keep the law. So what's Paul going to say? He says, for it's not the hearers of the law who are righteous in God's sight, but the doers of the law who will be justified or righteous. When Gentiles who do not possess the law do instinctively what the law requires, these, though not having the law, are a law to themselves. They do what's right because they have their own conscience. They show that what the law requires is written on the hearts. Maybe he's thinking about Jeremiah where it says that. You know, that God will write my law on their hearts. To which their own conscience also bears witness. And their conflicting thoughts will accuse or perhaps excuse them on the day when, according to my gospel, God through Jesus Christ will judge the secret thoughts of all. But if you call yourself a Jew and rely on the law and boast in your own relation to God and know His will and determine what is best because you are instructed in the law, and if you are sure that you are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness, a corrector of the foolish, a teacher of children, having in the law the embodiment of knowledge and truth, you then that teach others, will you not teach yourself? While you preach against stealing, do you steal? You that forbid adultery, do you commit adultery? You that abhor idols, do you rob temples? You that boast in the law, do you dishonor God by breaking the law? For as it is written, the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. And now, okay, so a Jewish person might say, hey, but I keep the law. And Paul's just going to go, oh yeah? Do you really? Okay, but what about circumcision? That was the sign of the covenant with Abraham. Circumcision indeed is of value if you obey the law, but if you break the law, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. For if those who are uncircumcised keep the requirements of the law, will not their uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? Then those who are physically uncircumcised but keep the law will condemn you and have the written code and circumcision but break the law. For a person is not a Jew. Whoa, now wait a minute. You can see why he got thrown in prison. For a person is not a Jew who is one outwardly, nor is true circumcision something external and physical. Rather, a person is a Jew who is one inwardly. And real circumcision is a matter of the heart. It is spiritual and not literal. Such a person receives praise not from others, but from God. When I look at this, whole long words, I'm going to sum it up this way. The people who do God's will are righteous. The people who don't aren't. The people who do God's will are the ones who are God's people. And the people who don't are not. Whether or not they've got all the right titles or not. That's what I'm hearing. All right. Then what advantages? You see, you start to get his argument now, because the Jewish person might say, well, why be a Jew then? What advantage did we have? Or what is the value of circumcision? Much in every way, Paul says. For in the first place, the Jews were entrusted with the oracles of God. You were given the special word of God. What if some were unfaithful? Will their unfaithfulness nullify the faithfulness of God? This is really important because the problem is not our own sin, but the problem is God going to get God's will done? Has God failed? By no means, Paul says. Although everyone is a liar, let God be proved true, as it is written, so that you may be justified in your words and prevail in your judging. I'd love to stop there, but I got to keep going. Yeah. I have somebody's...
I was laughing at you.
You're laughing. All right. But if our injustice, our dikaios, serves to confirm the justice of God, what should we say? That God is unjust to inflict wrath on us? I'm speaking in a human way now. By no means. For then how could God judge the world? But if through my falsehood God's truthfulness abounds to his glory, why am I still being condemned as a sinner? And why not say, as some people slander us by saying that we say, let us do evil that God may come, their condemnation is deserved. In other words, he's saying, hey, if all of that, someone might hear Paul and say, well, why not just eat, drink, and marry because we all die? Nobody keeps it. Let's just party. All right, hang in there. We're just about there. What then? Are we any better off? No, not at all. For we have already charged that all, both Jews and Greeks, are under the power of sin. As it is written, where is that from? Yeah, it's one of the Psalms from David. There is no one who is righteous, not even one. There is no one who has understanding. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. There is no one who shows kindness. There is not even one. Their throats are open graves. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of vipers is under their lips. Their mouths are full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and misery are in their paths. And the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be silenced and the whole world may be held accountable. Again, the root word of righteousness there, to God. For no human being will be justified in his sight by deeds prescribed by the law, for through the law comes knowledge of sin. Where's waypoint 3, I guess we were at. He starts, okay, Gentiles are totally bankrupt, they need Christ. Jews, are they better off? They've got the law. No, they're no better off. They haven't kept the law. None is righteous. And we don't. So now we get to chapter 21. But now, apart from the law, now we get to home base. Now we get to our destination. Apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been disclosed and is attested by the law and the prophets. And we get to the part that we've read. Now, I just want to make a contrast in my presentation here. Again, go back to the wisdom of Solomon, or go back to the church in Luther's day, or many other religions. What you would expect at this point is for the author to say, okay, but now you keep the law, do this, and this, and everything will be good. Or, hey, look how messed up the whole world is, but you're in the special group, so you're okay. None of that comes. That's not where Paul goes. He's tried to put everybody in the same boat, and now, he says, we're now justified by grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. Has God failed in being righteous and making us righteous? No. What's the answer? Jesus. He came, and his work, in particular on the cross and resurrection, brought us redemption. So this word means buy back. So look at all the stuff we've been enslaved to. Chapter 2 and chapter 3. Gentiles and Greeks. We've been enslaved to all this stuff. Now we have been righteous by grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. Well, how did the buying back happen? How did he get us to himself? How did he get us to be righteous? Well, God put forward a sacrifice of atonement. Jesus. Now, this word here is hilasterion, but then this, which is the hilasterion in the Ark of the Covenant, it's actually literally means for us in English, mercy seat. So that thing on top of the ark was the mercy seat, of which the blood of the animals were shed on. And so the life of the animal for the life of the people. So that was given to kind of bring forgiveness and life to the people. Well, how did God then deal with this problem of our unrighteousness and even God's wrath? We don't do something to pacify God. God says God's going to take care of it by giving up His own Son as that mercy seat. And so, as His life for our life. So this, Luther says this beautifully right in our small catechism. Do any of you remember the second article? We remember the third article a lot. Not with silver and gold, but with His own precious blood did He redeem me, a lost and forsaken sinner. So this is how it happens, that we are justified, is when we have faith, through the faithfulness of Christ, and when we have faith in this work that God did for us in Jesus Christ. Because in His divine forbearance, He had passed over the sins previously committed. It was to prove at the present time that He Himself is righteous and that He justifies the one who has faith in Jesus Christ.
Pastor?
I'm going to stop. Yeah.
Atonement, bringing together as one?
Yeah. One way to think about the meaning of that is at one meant. You're one with God, or is a quick little definition. But the word kind of encompasses how we become righteous, is really the way I would put it. So I said this text that was so important to Luther and so important throughout the church because I think we've missed it sometimes. I think we've missed... we just kind of pull it right out of context sometimes, and we don't see it in the line of Paul's long argument. That's why I just had to read the whole thing for you. Because our human answer is typically opposite of this. It's, okay, give me something to do to make up for the problem. But our human answer that's our human answer. God's answer is Jesus and this concept of atonement. We want to get around this somehow and make it something we do. The most we do is we receive, we trust it, we have faith in it. But we want somehow this salvation, this righteousing to be something we create and we do desperately. We want to do that. I want to pause and just get questions or comments, if there are any, about what I covered. I know that was a huge amount. And then I want to try and give an example that brings us to a kind of modern day situation. Yes?
It seems to me like through this,
Oh, here you go, Ansley.
mentions Jews,
Yes.
And he's not talking about the nationality. He's talking about people.
That's a tricky... He's not talking about the nation of Israel. He's talking about a people. There was no nation of Israel at this time. So yes. Yes. Yeah. Good. Good question. Yeah, please.
Well, it seems like all of that we've been looking at, all of this unrighteousness, are things we do with a wrong motivation. We're wanting to satisfy self rather than God.
Right.
And then you get down to verse 21 where it says, "But now a righteousness from God apart from the law has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify." That's
Right.
the turning point right there.
It is.
Turning from self-satisfaction to satisfying God.
Absolutely. And so even our righteous deeds are a way of worshiping the creature and not the creator, because we're, again, trying to create. It's a part of that whole system. Yeah, excellent. Okay, two things now. So at this point in Luther's Bible, he writes the word, does anybody know? In the margins. It's not actually in what Paul says. He writes this word, alone. Why would he write that? Why does he write the word alone in the margins by this part of Romans? Here, please, Barb, yeah.
to keep us from saying, oh yes, I'll have faith and I'll pile up some good works.
Yes, excellent. That's right. Notice what he says right here. Where does it say? Apart, right, 21. Now apart from the law. This is how crafty us human beings are in getting our own stuff in here. I once had a kid who converted to the Mormon faith in my youth group back in Lodi. And when I went up, because I was going to fight for her, I wasn't going to let her go. So I sat with her and the bishop, which is like the pastor of the church there. And I quoted this passage to that Mormon bishop. Because the Mormons clearly teach it's faith and works. And I said, well, what do you do with this? He said, no, that's just talking about the dead works of the law of Judaism. That's not talking about our good works. You see the move there? That's just talking about Judaism of Paul's day and the law. So he's saying that's what Paul's talking about. He's not talking about our good works. Of course, we have to do good works and keep the Book of Mormon and do all this stuff. See how we've got to we've got to somehow make it our way. We've got to somehow make it something we do, we accomplish. And I said, wow, that's an interesting move, Bishop.
I'm going out a little bit on thin ice here. But
please, Dave, I need somebody to do that.
Is this another run at trying to save the people that God created? In other words, from the very fall of Adam and Eve, he looked at that and things got worse and got worse and got worse, and along comes Noah. Things were wiped out, and was this another chance to do right? Then he began to send the preachers and so on, but it only got worse.
Yes.
So is this like round 3 or third attempt to do something, or maybe there were multiple attempts, but it just was something that passed through the mind?
No, I think that there's really something to that, Dave, in the story of the Scriptures. Although my thought is that some of the New Testament writers say that, like Paul says here, that it's attested by the law and the prophets. That all of them, if we rightly understood them, were pointing us to this point. But I think we have to some degree, say, yeah, God tried to do it this way, and that didn't work out. And then he gave the law. How'd that go? Well, not so good. So Paul will come around in Galatians say, the law was just a custodian until Christ. So God he was still working to make us righteous. When he chose Abraham and Sarah, that's where the whole justified by faith, God reckoned it to him as righteousness because he believed. So Paul will say, hey, it was right there. But Christ is the fulfillment of all of that. So I think there is something to that, Dave, that, wow, we did this, and this. Okay, that's it. Finally, I'd say that's the way we'd explain the incarnation. I got to become one of them, to get my will done. How is God going to get God's will accomplished in the world? And this is kind of the ultimate event. So yeah, I think that's well said. Yeah, well said. Other responses to this. Yeah, please.
This is actually kind of breaking the train a little, and I apologize.
That's all right.
I feel like we're all a little bit stunned. I really appreciate the setup for this, the waypoints along the way.
Yeah.
Earlier on, you had asked about chapter 2.
Yes.
And does it apply in Paul's time, or is it our time? Are we different?
Right.
And this is something I read in the paper this last week. I don't have a Phase 2 sign-up sheet or any of that. So,
right.
But it was in the news that there are 58 gender choices on Facebook.
Right.
And the story wasn't bad.
Yeah.
They added another one, 59, which is other. For
Yeah.
the people who can't quite figure out where they fit in 58 other choices. Is our time different? I don't know.
Good
I'm going to add a little bit at the very end of the first chapter, verse 32. They know God's decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, yet they not only do them, but even applaud others who practice them. That reminds me, what were we doing last Sunday night? Watching the Academy Awards?
Ooh, you guys are... I see one hand. I guess I want to say, when I look at Paul's argument, it absolutely applies today. I'm not saying that it doesn't, in fact. But you just have to remember that he's going from one place to another. And he cites the same gender sexual activity of his day as an example of we need Christ. And then he says, but don't you judge. So don't you think you're any better? So what I think I for sure want to say that whether someone understands themselves as gay or lesbian or heterosexual or one of the many 59 gender choices, whether they're black or white or, you know, where they come from, where their socio-economic background is, whether, you know, whatever their religious background is, all of that is, it has nothing to do with you being righteous. What we do once we've been righteous then is where we go back to Romans 2 and say, is that the right application? And that's what we've wrestled with for quite a long time. So I see two, Ken and then HR.
No, I'm thankful to hear about the good news.
Yes.
Because if I were living then and I were going to worship, I would have gone to some temple where a male or female prostitute would have helped me hope to God. If I manipulated him,
yeah,
I could have good crops.
Yes.
So I'm thankful there's a different way.
Yes. Right. Well said. Yeah.
More of a comment.
Yeah, please.
A few years ago, I read the book by Anthony Flew, who, if any of you know, was probably the leading atheist in the world until 2004, when he said, no, I believe there is a God. And in it, he talks about what brought him around. And one of the things was basically the writings of Paul. And he said Paul was probably the greatest philosopher that's ever lived.
Wow. Anthony Flew. I have not read this book.
He wrote, and in his book, he goes through all the things he wrote, disproving the existence of God. And ultimately, one of his comments that James says, he was always taught and believed in the scientific way.
Yeah.
And that you have to go where the facts lead you. And ultimately, it was because what he's learned through science, and even though he himself is a philosopher,
yeah,
he has a deep understanding of science and follows it. And he says, if you follow it to its ultimate kind of conclusion and what we know about science, he says it comes down to science can never prove or disprove the existence of God.
Right.
And so therefore, it ultimately comes down, but if you look at how it is and how we are and how the earth came to be, the existence we have, and the anthropology of man, you know, the universe exists for us, you know, then it comes down to that in that, even though, quote, you can never prove it, you kind of know that there has to be a God.
Yeah, wow.
And that's his kind of ultimate thing he comes to.
Yeah.
A lot of it was kind of dry reading, and I don't remember all the things, but those were the kind of the big points that I got out of it.
And I wonder if part of the first part of Romans here isn't, you know, a part of that what can be known about God is, you know, in creation. So, but then I guess I'd ultimately say what we believe is that this event of Christ and the whole biblical story is kind of God breaking through, giving us a special revelation. But please.
Thinking about, it's really helpful for me to hear about the waypoints.
Yes.
And when I don't want to see something on a map, I can just kind of close my eyes and not see it. So I'm thinking that Paul is making points, waypoints, and he says, this sexual immorality. And hey, I'm pretty cool on that.
Right.
My life looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I think I'll just skip over the next waypoint that Paul has about hard-heartedness,
Yeah.
because maybe I'd be a little more vulnerable to that.
Yes. I think if we look at Romans as a way to go up and hold a sign and say, God hates this person, we've missed the whole thing. The only sign that we should hold up is, we're all in trouble. That would be an appropriate sign. But if we use that as a way to cast others out, we've fallen prey to the very opposite of what Paul's saying, is that basically, hey, everybody, you've got no excuse. Gossips. He lists a lot of things there in addition to those other things. Now, again, I'm not saying that we still say, gossiping is wrong, but what's the intent of that scripture, first and foremost? Then secondly, we move and look at ethics. Very
just
excellent,
to
Mark.
clarify some confusion. So, judgment on other people, bad.
Yeah.
But aren't we called to be judges of ourselves? To fill these, we don't want to be in any of those categories that are listed.
Yeah.
So is it the judgment of ourselves that we should be doing?
Well, let me put it this way. It depends on what you mean by judge. Because I hear this a lot. Well, I don't want to judge somebody. Well, if judge means saying, you're not a child of God, you're going to hell, then that's judging. In this context, are you righteous or not? Are you in God's family, in God's people or not? We're not supposed to say, you're out. That's God's job. So we're not to judge, period. That's God's job. But yes, Don, we still have to say what's right, what's wrong. Is this okay for me to do? Is this not okay for me to do? See, so because when I hear people say, oh, Pastor Bill, I don't want to judge, I'm with you. But if you mean by that, I'm not going to say, you want me to judge. You want me to say we don't want to just let go of what's right and wrong. We may disagree with what's right and wrong, but we're not just letting go of that. And so that's a really important point. That's my distinction, Don, is to say, well, yeah, we don't judge, we don't condemn people. That, in fact, we're all condemned. That's the point, without Christ. So now that we have Christ, we still have, though, to say, okay, well, what should I do, should I not do in this complex world of ethics and stuff? So that's just to clear that up. It's a great point. All right. If you were to go on, it would say, well, what can we boast then in? And Paul says you can't boast in anything other than Jesus. So there it is. This is one of the key passages in Romans, and so important. And next week we'll take on another one. Thank you. Go in peace. Oh, if it's real quick, because we're over time, like 5 minutes. Okay.
My grandfather said a long time ago, the worst thing that's going to happen to us people is most of us think we are the only ones that know anything that's right. And me, myself, and I is a disease.
Well, good point. That's a good summary of Paul's argument there. All right, go in peace. Serve the Lord.